Hello everyone, it's Sabrina from the Gombe family with
Safari.
and
Georgina.
and today we are going to talk about our journey through schooling in Kenya. So we have 4 different categories that we are going to talk about today, particularly when they went to school in the village area, which was the school called Trinity, and then when we got to Nairobi, they went to a school called Twin Kids. And each of those was for 1 semester. And then the third is homeschool, and most recently we started unschooling, which is a little bit different. So we're going to talk about those 4 things. I'll give you a little bit of an idea of each of them, and then I will ask them what they liked and didn't like about each. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first one is Trinity. So we looked at a few different schools in the village area, and this one seemed to be the best without having to go very far. So we live in a town called Dezo, and there was much better schools, but in a city close called Kilifi. So we would have to take them to school like 20 to 30 minute one way every single morning if we were going to send them to one of those better schools in Kilifi. So we kind of settled for like a happy medium and sent them to Trinity, which was in between Tezo and Kilifi, and it was a decent price range. So they only ended up going to school there 1 semester, and that's because we decided to move to Nairobi, but also because we decided that we just weren't going to send them back anyways, and we'll talk about those things. So Safari, what is a positive thing about Trinity?
Well, I liked the teacher. She was really sweet, and she barely even caned kids.
Cane is another way to say like beat or like hit with a stick.
And yeah, that's it.
Okay, Georgina, do you have a positive about a good thing about Trinity?
I like the teacher, but she don't cane kids too much. But that is
Okay. So tell us a negative thing something that you didn't like about Trinity.
I like the teacher, but the teacher did not speak English.
Okay. So in regards to that, I noticed that very early on, actually. The principal of the school, who is the person that we talked to in order to get the girls enrolled in the school, she spoke English, but I didn't really communicate too much with the teacher before they started going to the school. And so then we would have concerns, especially since this is Safari's first time going to school in Kenya, so I would be like, is this normal, right? So we would talk to the teacher every once in a while, and every time I would voice something, and I understand that when English is not somebody's first language, you need to speak slower, and use certain words that are simple. I understand that, right? And so I would, and she would still like look at me like she was so confused, and then she would look at Shaha to like tell her what I was saying in Swahili to translate it for her. So that was a problem. One specific time, we dropped them off at school late, and so like I told the teacher, oh, they didn't have enough time to tie their ties this morning. Can you help them tie their tie? And she looked at me and she was like, tie costs 250 shillings. And I was like, so then like Shaha translated to her in Swahili, and she was like, oh, okay, no problem. And I was just like, you're supposed to be teaching my child in English, and you can't even understand anything that I'm saying, So that was really concerning. And it wouldn't be concerning if we were sending them to a school where they taught in Swahili or they taught in their mother tongue. But this is a school that advertises themselves, which most schools in Kenya teach in English. They advertise themselves as teaching every subject in English, of course, except for Swahili. So I'm just like, how are you teaching my kids in English if you can't even communicate with me in simple conversation? So is there anything else that you didn't like about Trinity?
I didn't like the teacher because she didn't speak English, first of all. Second of all, we wanted to go. Remember when we wanted to go to Nairobi just for like a Vitiligo day? The principal, I was telling her that we had to skip for like a week or so, and she was like, and we had exams, we had tests, and she was like, is going to Nairobi more important than exams? So I didn't know what to say because I would get beat for like sassing the teacher. So I really didn't like that.
So we were coming to Nairobi for like World Vitiligo Day. So they only took like 2 or 3 days off because World Vitiligo Day was on a Saturday. I think we left the coast on like a Thursday or maybe a Wednesday night. So they only missed like 2 days of school, but it happened to be testing time. And so I guess the principal came up to Safari and was like, oh, is that more important than your schooling, than your testing? And I told Safari, I was like, you should have told her my parents think so because they're taking me out of school. You know, like, why would you ask a kid that when it's not the kid's decision whether they're going to this event or not going to this event, you know? Like, it's not like Safari came up to me and was like, Mom, I'm not going to school these days and you better take us to Nairobi. Like, no, like this was the parents' decision, taking the kids with them. So she has no say in it as an 8-year-old, you know? Besides the fact that I have a very unique outlook on schooling in general, and I think that, yes, it was definitely more important than them going to school, you know? Like, should they go to Nairobi and get this world experience of traveling on the bus, seeing giraffes, monkeys, zebras on the way to Nairobi, being able to be around people that have vitiligo just like Shaha does, you know, and like experience how beautiful that is to be around people that are so different and unique, you know? This is giving them all worldly experiences that I fully support, you know? And I understand that many people in the village don't get that type of education because they don't have the money to go travel here or there, you know? And if they do have to travel to Nairobi, it might just be for work and they don't take their children with them, you know? So they learn very awesome skills in the village, such as knowing which tree they can touch or not touch, knowing which fruits that come from different trees that they can eat or not eat, you know, skills like that. But in regards to worldly skills like traveling and stuff like that, they don't get that much. So when they have the opportunity to send their kids to school, they send their kids to school, you know, as opposed to us, we travel often. So yes, that's more important to us than sitting in a classroom with a bunch of rowdy kids and doing a couple pages in a workbook. So that's just my perspective. But that was our first experience with Trinity. That was the first school that they went to. The last straw for me was exam books. So the exam time that we're talking about when we went to the Vitiligo Day, the secretary had called me and said that we needed to pay 300 shillings each for their exam books. And I was like, no. We already paid for that. Like, it was a package thing where they like listed off everything for tuition at the beginning of the semester, right? And so there was assessment books on there was their tracksuits for PE, there was their uniforms, all of this stuff, socks, everything was listed on there, right? Including the assessment books. And so I was like, no, we already paid for that. And she was like, no, the thing is that the books are now more expensive, and so we have to go buy the books for the exam, and it's going to cost us 300 shillings, where at first we thought it was 200 shillings. So on your tuition payment, you paid 200 shillings, so you need to pay us 100 shillings more per child. So now we went from, you want 300 shillings each from me, to me telling you, no, I know what's up. And then her being like, oh, okay, well, I need 100 shillings each from you because they cost more now. I was like, no, you're not getting that from me either, because you should have bought the books way before the semester started. So you should have had them in your possession and known, okay, these books cost 200, 150, and thus charging us that much. So just because you didn't know, because you decided to buy them last minute, when it was assessment time, that's not my problem, you know? And she got so rude with me. And she was like, oh, well, somebody will call you and blah, blah, blah. I guess you don't care about your kids having assessments. And I was like, no. My kids told me they already have an assessment book with their name on it. So that's not a problem because the teacher had already given out the books thinking that all the parents, many of these parents are uneducated, thinking that many of the parents would just be like, oh, okay, I will find 100 shillings and give to you when I can. No. Obviously, like many parents are not going to look and be like, oh, I already paid for that, you know? And so I was like, no, like that's not going to happen. So that was kind of, we ended up getting that settled and I didn't pay the extra 100 and my kids did get an assessment book, but that was just kind of the last straw for me. Like, what kind of school are you running here? So that was our first experience with that school. So now let's talk about twin kids, which is when we arrived in Nairobi, which we were going to homeschool them originally, but we thought, this will be like simpler for us if like they go to school, they'll have more engagement with like peers. And yeah, so we thought we would try again, thinking Nairobi might be like a more modern experience, but we thought wrong. So Safari, let's start with you. What was a positive thing about twin kids?
Let's see here. I really liked my friends. I had quite a lot of friends, and I liked playing with my friends a lot. And at the end of class, my teacher would allow me to get some like plain paper and like my watercolors and glue and that stuff, and like make some arts and crafts. So that's what I used to do with my friends, and I enjoyed my art club for the short time I was there.
Okay. How about you? What is a positive thing? What is a good thing about twin kids?
The good one.
Mm-hmm.
I like to like when the school is finished,
Mm-hmm.
like when you guys are coming to pick us,
Mm-hmm.
like we usually use our watercolors and paper pen something, and then when you guys are there, then we're going to go home.
Oh, okay. So you liked that there was like free time at the end of school.
Yeah.
Okay. So Safari, what is a negative thing about twin kids?
I have quite a lot. So I really did not like my teacher, like seriously at all, and
But you have to be specific. Why?
because she liked to cane kids, she liked to abuse kids seriously, like a lot. And when she once caned Georgina, and she was like, feel my fingers, like they're like swollen. And I felt her fingers. Your fingers are usually squishy, and like hers was like as hard as a rock. So I really did not like that.
She's saying that like the teacher caned like the tips of their fingers. So like maybe after like 4 hours or something, it wouldn't leave a mark. Like by the time we picked her up, which is kind of the point, right? Like you don't want to see marks on your kid when you pick them up from school. So by the time that we picked her up from school, like you couldn't really see a mark. But for the entire day, from when she caned her on her finger, it was like swollen. Like it was like bigger than normal, right? So that's kind of the point. If you don't want the parents to see like, oh, you're beating my kid and leaving marks. She caned her earlier in the day. She had hours for her swelling to go down. And then by the time we picked her up, it wasn't there. So most parents don't listen to their kids so much here, right? They're like, oh, you're exaggerating. Oh, you must have done something wrong for your teacher to cane you. And caning is actually not supposed to be happening in Kenya anymore. We actually talked to the principal, and she is the one who told us that caning is not supposed to happen here. So, yeah, anything else?
Well, there's a couple of people in our class that were very rude and very inappropriately rude, and I really did not like that. And the whole class was like gross and weird, and the teacher would usually, like when she wanted to cane a kid, they always like tried to take their hand away. So she used to grab their hand like this and then cane them on their finger. So that's how Georgina got swellings on her finger, and I did not like that. I did not like being in that environment, in that classroom, because, yeah.
Okay. So what is your negatives?
Something that I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't like the teacher at all.
What?
she is so freaking rude. She's
Like
rude.
how? Give us an example.
Like how?
Like tell us something that she was rude, like a situation where she was rude.
She liked to kill people, and also I didn't know like the food that they give us for lunch. Yeah.
Tell us why you didn't like the food. Like what was wrong with it?
It's like rotten.
Rotten, yeah.
For example, they're cooking rice and beans, and then the beans has tomatoes and the tomatoes are like rotten.
So it didn't like
And
smell
some of
good.
the beans were not even cooked. Like,
Oh, all the way.
yeah, like once I ate one and it was not cooked at all. Like I was eating my food because I was hungry, and I was like eating it super fast, and then I got that bean, and I like, you know how you're eating fast and you're really hungry, and like you like chew really fast. I got that bean in my mouth, and oh my god, my teeth almost broke.
Okay. And didn't you say something about that it wasn't a lot of food?
It was not. Like one spoon
Yeah.
of rice and 1 spoon of beans.
Yeah.
Or 1 spoon of green grams.
Yeah, so they would usually, it was really like beyond the poor man's meal, right? Because we pay for this. So we paid a little over 3,000 shillings for each kid to eat lunch there instead of us bringing their lunch, right? So that's about $30 each for them to get a semester of food, right? But this is not just like food, like you think the cafeteria food in America might be horrible. This is like rice, unseasoned, just white rice, and like a spoonful of some type of beans. So green grams or beans, or sometimes like it would just be like a vegetable, like steam, like cabbage and stuff like that.
It would just be cabbage.
Was there carrots in it or anything like that, or just cabbage?
It would be sometimes usually just cabbage.
And there's be too much onion on it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so like it would just be like simple things like that. So it wouldn't be, of course there was like no meat, there was no like anything of like sustenance, and it was super small portions anyways. So it's kind of just like, what are we paying for, you know? Like after a few days, like the girls would be like, we're so hungry, they barely give us any food. So like we would have to give them a snack and something to supplement their lunch. So really like, what am I paying you for, you know? Like, so that was kind of like useless. So is there anything else you could think of that you didn't like at school? Either of you?
With mine, the teacher used to wear very inappropriate clothes, and that was very disturbing. So it would be like, they all know that there's like they've seen in movies probably that there's like a slit in like a dress. It used to be like all the way to like here sometimes.
And she always underwear only.
Yeah.
Without any pants.
And it would flip around when she walked really fast, and she was mad and she walked, and
Everyone can see her booty.
Yeah, see, so that's another thing. Like I and my kids dress very conservatively, so we all wear Dara dresses. They go down to the ground, you know. Like I like to make sure that we're covered because there is issues here with pedophilia and little girls being targeted, and we don't want to have to deal with that, right? So we are as conservative as possible, not to mention that I keep my children in sight pretty much all the time, you know. So yeah, I don't want their teacher to be showing them, oh, it's okay to show your booty, or oh, it's okay to do this and this. Another issue that we had is that often whenever they would have a test or whatever the case may be, they're done with a lesson, the teacher would be like, oh, just sleep for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So I am paying tuition for my children to sleep for the rest of the day. My children can sleep at home for free.
One day,
Wait.
wait first. One day, morning, early morning, that we just get there, put our head down and sleep, and we did not do any subject until the evening. We did environmental.
One subject that day, but the rest of the day,
sleeping.
I wasn't even sleeping.
Was that the day that the teacher was like sick?
No. It was like the day before we left. It was the day before the day that we left, and we were sleeping. That is
I did not even sleep.
And
I was just like this.
Yes.
Like I used like to carry one book at school,
Mm-hmm.
like my storybooks.
Mm-hmm.
You used to carry one of those each day.
Yeah, and I used to give one Safaranda can be reading when I'm in the desk so that the teacher can see me. When you move your head up, the teacher will cane you.
Yeah, she would cane you if you didn't sleep.
See, that's the stuff I'm talking about. Like, we're paying tuition for the teacher to tell the kids to sleep. It's just kind of ridiculous. And we brought this up to the principal a few times, and it was just like, okay, we told her why are our kids being caned when caning is not supposed to happen anymore. So then she talked to the teacher, and our kids didn't get caned anymore, but the teacher still adamantly caned the rest of the kids in front of our kids, you know?
The teacher caned me because I did not have a pencil, and I told the teacher, I want my pencil. And she was like, go to write with your hands, with your fingers. And I was like, how am I supposed to write with my fingers?
Yeah.
And she was like, go write with your fingers. Then when everybody was done, then the teacher caned me.
Yeah, she came home and told us that, and it's just kind of like ridiculous. Like, okay, if somebody's like being bad and they're breaking their pencils time and time again, like you can say something dumb like that, right? But if my kid is saying like, oh, like I don't have a pencil, or my pencil like won't sharpen, or whatever the case, and I have sent with my kids 12 pencils each, and for you to be like, no, go write with your finger. That was another issue that I had with this school, because they give you, just like in America, they give you a list of all the things that you need to bring to school. This many pencils. There were 6 pencils on that list, right? And I sent my kids.
No, it was 12.
No, there were 6 on the list. And then I sent you guys 12. So I sent you guys 6 extra pencils. And then the teacher took all of them, except for 2. She let each kid have 2 pencils and took the rest. So you're taking 10 pencils away from my kid.
And we had 3 erasers.
Just us.
She
just
took
us.
2.
She gave all the other kids all of their pencils, but we only got 2 each.
Yeah, see, that's the first time that I'm hearing about that. But regardless, like if you're requiring us to give 6 pencils for each kid, and you're giving the kids 2 pencils each, so my kids should have 8 pencils, because you required bringing 6, we brought 12, right? So they should hold on to those 6, and then you're giving each kid 2 of their pencils. So they should have 8 pencils, and thus this would have never been a situation. So that is, and we're still waiting to get some of the stuff on that list back from the school, because they didn't give them all of the stuff that they had brought.
You see, we have 3 erasers, and the teacher took 2 of them, and for us 1.5. No, it was a half.
Yeah, see, so it was just like a lot of shady stuff. And from my perspective, it's like if somebody doesn't bring the list of stuff, then they just like give that kid something from kids that do bring the stuff, right? So they tell you bring 14 or 16 of the little workbooks, but you're not going to use 14 or 16 of those books like in a semester. But if a kid doesn't bring them, then they just give your kid's stuff away to another kid. So it's just ridiculous. But let's go to homeschool now. So let's talk about homeschool. Georgina, what is a positive thing, a good thing that you like about homeschool when me and Shaha are teaching you?
I like that, like here, we teach very well, like we don't sleep, like we start morning, and then break lunch, eat lunch, and then we're going to go on our phones to do the thing that we have did in school.
Okay. So she's kind of explaining like our daily routine. So we would wake up in the morning, we would have breakfast. About 9 o'clock, we would start schooling, and we would do 3 subjects that day. So we would switch off on subjects every other day. And then we would break for lunch, and then after lunch, they would get the cell phones that we don't use. We have 2 iPhones we don't use, and so they use those, and I have put educational apps on them. And then, so for example, if they learned environmental that day, then they would go do 30 minutes of environmental on their phone, and they have an app for that. So that would be the daily routine. Safari, what is a positive thing about homeschool?
They teach us, you guys teach us a lot harder things, and they're teaching us personal items there. It's like, okay. And right now we're learning things that they're learning in like 7th grade, like the food chain and multiplication, like up to 12. And a lot of kids outside don't even know what 12 times 12 is, but we know it easily. And here we are being taught by someone who doesn't abuse their kids, because that teacher also has her own kid, and we also are treated a lot better here, and it's more fun here than there.
Okay, so what she's explaining is that like when she goes outside and talks to her friends, that she kind of understands like what they're learning in their schooling or whatever. And we know that Kenya is an up and coming country, right? So they're still trying to figure out things. They say that their like schooling system is based off of like an American type schooling system, which I completely don't agree with. Having a kid that's been in both systems, I think that they're very different. You know, so things that Safari learned in preschool, kindergarten, they're learning in 2nd or 3rd grade here, you know? And so like I'll just look at their books, their textbooks, and I'm just like, what is happening, you know? Like we started teaching them multiplication in homeschool, and I looked at their books for multiplication, and it was just like 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. It was like page 10 or 11 of multiplication before they showed any type of like multiplication sign, you know? So that was just kind of like a little bit ridiculous to me. So tell us about your positive experiences with, or yeah, the bad experiences with homeschool.
You guys actually get mad at us, like if we don't like remember anything, you get mad at us, and I think that's it.
Okay.
I probably have at least 2. You get mad at us, obviously, and when we get a test wrong, example are I got an 8 out of 10 on my history test, and I was really upset at myself because of that. So that's the only thing.
In multiplication, that we had 1 until to 25.
For multiplication?
Yeah.
1 to 12.
No, I got 20.
Oh, okay, the test.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 25.
It was 25, and I got 21 out of 25.
Yep. So what they're saying is that like maybe we lose our temper like sometimes, but we're of course more invested in the kids. So that's the main thing, you know, like we're looking at them like, okay, we just taught you this yesterday. Why don't you remember this? Okay, we've been teaching you this for over a week. Why don't you remember this, you know? And I think that oftentimes, especially Georgina being in the Kenyan school system, she's not used to somebody being so over her and watching her directly, right? Because she's been in school where like the teacher's like, oh, here's a test. Oh, you failed or whatever. And it doesn't really matter. You know, the teacher doesn't be like, Georgina, why did you get this wrong? Georgina, we taught you this. You know, like they don't follow up because they don't care, you know, like, okay, this is my job. I taught them, I went home. I taught them, I went home. They don't have any investment in these kids being successful like we do in our own kids, you know? So that's something that we are more harsh on them than the teacher might be, in the sense of, we expect you to remember this if we've been teaching you this for weeks on end, you know? So that's the only really negative that they could say about that. But let's talk about the final aspect, which is unschooling. So we recently started trying unschooling, which is more of a student-based learning, right? So they get to use their phones, they can research if they want to. Safari has researched Abraham Lincoln and a bunch of other things.
I don't know how tall he is.
They have different apps. So they have a 4th grade app that has language arts and science and math on it. And then they have Epic, which is an awesome app for reading, and a bunch of different apps that they can use when they feel like it. So they start doing their unschooling in the morning after they take a shower and eat breakfast, and they want to start with multiplication. There's a multiplication app that they can use, or they want to start with reading a book. They can do that, you know. And then I get emails from the Epic app that says, okay, this child has taken a test and got this score, or this child has read this many books. So it's easy for me to keep up with them. So let's talk to the girls about their pros and cons of unschooling. So Safari, what are your pros of unschooling?
Pros of unschooling. It's a lot more fun because no one's getting mad at me and stuff. And it's a lot easier to learn with that because it's a lot more fun. It's on my phone, and I get to research like about people's lives that I want to be like someday, and about what I want to like, what colleges are good and stuff. Because I'm learning a lot of things that kids are not learning in second grade here or America, and it's just a lot of fun and a lot of entertaining and a lot more educational.
Okay. So what are your pros? What are things that you like about unschooling?
I like reading books, and I also like to go in fourth grade and like do some spelling test and other things. And some like in Epic, there's another word that I don't know like how to read them. Another one I don't know like how to spell them. That is my problem.
So okay, so now she's going to the cons. I was just about to ask you that. So she's saying that her cons are that with unassisted learning, she has a hard time sometimes because she's still learning English, learning how to read English. So she's done an amazing job. Obviously, you can see she's answering questions just fine. And less than 6 months ago, she knew 0 English. So she's doing an amazing job. So she's still learning certain words. So when she's reading, she'll see a word and she'll still be able to understand the sentence, but she still doesn't understand how to say that word. So for example, if the book is about The Wizard of Oz, she read that and it's about Dorothy, right? So if she can't sound out Dorothy and somebody says, okay, who's the main character? Then she's like, and it kind of makes it seem like she didn't read the book, you know? But she did, she just didn't know how to sound out Dorothy. So that's what she's saying, that's kind of a struggle when she's doing the spelling app or she's reading a book and she can't sound out that word. So we have talked about that, and we're gonna do more not assisted learning, but we're going to do more interactive learning. So one of us is with her when she's reading or things like that, just so that we could help her through her journey of learning and how she decides to learn. So Safari, what are your negatives of unschooling?
Negatives of unschooling, let's see. It was a lot of fun to learn with you guys, and it's sometimes like really hard if I'm reading a chapter book in Epic. That's really hard, and the word about Abraham. Say it's a book about Abraham Lincoln, and I can't sound out the word Emancipation Proclamation, and I don't understand it, and sometimes I don't ask. So when the quizzes on, there's like quizzes at the end to see if you actually read the book.
Mm-hmm.
If it says, what did he sign? I'm like, I sometimes can't read them, and I'm like, and one is like spelled like something different, and one is spelled the right one, and I press the one that is spelled different than the Emancipation Proclamation, and I get it wrong. That's annoying. And probably when I go on this game called fourth grade, it's called fourth grade, like English and math, and so I'm doing math, and I'm trying to add 2 fractions, and it's 2 really hard fractions because I have to simplify them too. So when I do that and I get it wrong, that's also annoying. So that's all.
Okay, so I taught Safari fractions just one day. So then I showed her on the 4th grade app there was a fraction section. So I don't even know that she was ready for that section. I just thought that I would like test her out with it and see how that went. But yeah, so usually if there's something on the apps that we have taught them, especially since we just started unschooling, so we're still referencing things that we taught them in the homeschool aspect of this dynamic. And so we'll say, okay, go on this app because it has multiplication. We just taught you the multiplication table. Or go on this language app so that you can practice your comprehension. Or read this many books a week, etc. You know. So that's all 4 of the aspects of unschooling. Okay.
I was supposed to learn Swahili a lot, but I've learned a lot of it, but now I'm starting to learn French because I really want to go to Paris because we all know, well, I don't think they do know, but I want to be a movie star and a pop star soon. So I want to go to France because that's where pop stars are. Yeah, and so that's where I want to go. So I want to learn the language and everything. So it's my goal to go to all 197 countries in the whole world. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to learning all of the languages.
Okay, one more.
Mine is I'm going to be a linguist and I want to learn every language.
Yes.
There can be a linguist.
And she's starting on Chinese, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is something that I have been watching YouTube videos to try to better understand how unschooling is a positive thing for kids, and if they want to learn something as opposed to just, oh, chapter 7 today, if they want to learn something instead of somebody pushing it on them, they are going to remember it better and use it more in their daily life, right? So it has been a struggle for me because I have tried to push onto them Swahili, especially Safari, because we live in Kenya, right? So you don't want to be left out. You should probably know Swahili, but that's not what she's interested in. She wanted to learn French, right? So she changed her Duolingo to French. She changed her Duolingo to Chinese, So I hear them say that and I'm like, oh, I want them to learn Swahili, but I have to support what they are trying to learn. I have to support if they have motivation to learn a certain language, that I should support that, and I'm learning that as time goes on. So this unschooling thing is still very, very new to us, so I wouldn't say to quote us on anything that we're doing, but we just wanted to give you an update of our schooling progress in Kenya and how we have decided to do things based on what's best for our kids, based on our financial situation, and I think things are going well. One main concern people have with homeschooling or unschooling is that the kids don't get enough socialization. They don't get to play with kids their age, which couldn't be farther from the truth because we live in a gated community here and there are tons of kids outside. So they don't often get to play with them on the weekdays just because kids might come home from school late and we're doing our unschooling situations here as well as other things, but they get to play with their friends on Saturdays and Sundays usually, and so they get plenty of socialization. So that's not really an issue for us. Not to mention that we take them on mini trips with us, going back and forth from the coast or going into town for our grocery shopping, so we'll take them to the kids area in the mall while we go to the grocery store. So they get to do a lot of different playthings, activities. We did a painting activity with things that you could find in your home the other day. So we do a lot of different things like that to switch it up and make it a good time. So I hope you guys got information out of this, and if you guys are coming to Kenya soon with children, then maybe we have given you some kind of ideas of what would be best for your family. The first 2 schools that we talked about are private schools in Kenya, but they are not international schools. So they're kind of mid-level. They're not public government schools and they're not international schools. They're just like in between the private schools. So that's also something for you to consider if you come here with more money or you don't think that you can homeschool your kids, then you might want to look into an international school. That might be an option for you as well. So that is all we have for you today, and we hope that you enjoyed our video. Please remember to
subscribe
and like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we will see you in our next video. Bye!
Bye!